What if the emotional exhaustion you are feeling is not asking you to quit, but asking you to listen a little bit more deeply, to establish new foundations and to feel what love feels?
Mm.
Thanks for being here. In this report, we are going to talk about the moon. Tee us up.
Well, we're going to talk about the full moon in Aquarius on Saturday, August 9th at 1:54 a.m. Mountain Time. But before we pull up the chart and take a look at it, I just kind of want to set the context to where we've come from the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So we had a new moon in Leo in gate 31, the gate of influence. Of course, every new moon is a beginning. It's like a birthing of the lunar cycle we're about to experience. So I really think of it as a chapter, or the title of the chapter,
Right.
of what we're heading into. So we're thinking about Leo, influence, creativity, identity. It's that fixed fire sign of this is me and this is what I love to do.
Yeah.
And we all love a lot of that. But there was a particular aspect in this new moon chart, which was that new moon in gate 31, the gate of influence, was exactly opposite Pluto to the degree. We had a new moon opposition with Pluto. So it had a very strong Plutonic signature. Pluto is the planet of death, rebirth, transformation. Pluto is deep shadow work personally.
Yeah.
It's also a collective planet. So whenever we're thinking outer planets, we're also thinking about the collective aspect to that. But personally, it meant that there was be challenges to this creativity and identity that we may connect with in our Leo-ness of our lives. It also could mean that there was going to be some destabilization. Pluto is it's so powerful. I have so much experience with Pluto in my life. It kind of gives me a sensation because of my relationship with it. We would never call it easy, but I would call it profound. It's deep. It's transformative. It indicates that we're going to be dealing with our shadow nature, pieces of our life that we've put away or shoved away and covered up and tried not to let out into the light. But with this new moon, at the dark of the moon, at the birth of this cycle, Pluto was standing there saying, I am here too.
Yeah.
Look at me.
Yeah.
I will show you myself. But I do mention this idea that it may have been an experience, as it was for us in these first couple of weeks. It comes out of nowhere.
Yeah,
it can show up in shocking ways, triggering ways that we just had no anticipation for. This is how Pluto operates in our lives. He has this sensation of coming upon us.
Yeah.
To me, it's very much like a very ice cold winter wind. You know, when you're bundled up, but you can still feel the coldness to your bone.
Yeah.
This is kind of how Pluto comes upon us in unexpected ways at unexpected times.
And so the moon, this cycle, was inviting us to be our Leo expression through the cold coming upon us, in spite of or in addition to allowing Pluto to exist. What does that mean? Allowing Pluto to exist in your life, allowing transformation to exist, allowing death and rebirth to take its place in the natural seasons of your life. And, you know, the lion represents the sun. It doesn't mean that it is always at its brightest and its peak. The sun always moves through feelings or periods of intensity and less intensity. And so this time with Pluto being in opposition allowed us to still know that we are lioness, even though we may feel vulnerable, even though we may feel weak. The visual or the story is the lioness. She's fierce out there in the world. And when she is doing what she's doing, she is doing it with a purpose and with strength and resilience and valor and virtue. And when she comes home, she rolls on her back and allows herself to be groomed by her mates and asks for connection and companionship by submission, by lowering herself. So it's this idea that just because I have needs doesn't mean that I am weak, and that my understanding the balance between the intensity and the ability to also be surrendered to receive.
So that was all from the new moon chart. And then as the moon went through her first week of the cycle and grew in illumination every day, we got to the first quarter moon, which is a very energetic time. This is when she's waxing and growing in illumination every night. And when she gets to the first quarter, she's half full. It's a very dynamic energy, the two luminaries squaring themselves. The moon has a lot of emotional torque at the first quarter. And the moon happened to be in Scorpio at the first quarter, which is the sign that Pluto rules. So again, Pluto's signature at the first quarter. And as we approach the full moon, on Friday, the day before the full moon, the moon made her conjunction with Pluto just prior to the full moon. I'm sharing all this again just to bring us up to speed to this full moon and what a strong Plutonic signature it had.
And so some of the words we could use to tell that story in another way is that our emotions, when Richard says waxing and growing, our emotional responses to the transformation, the death and rebirth that's being offered to us in whatever area of your chart it is affecting, you'd have to look at that or contact us and we can help you look at that. But there was death and rebirth in that area. And so that first quarter moon, that growing, that waxing is, oh, I feel some kind of way about that thing dying. And so then it's at the culmination of it, it is this is exactly how I feel about this death and rebirth process and an opportunity to restory that.
And to accept, I want to mention that word. We're dealing with Pluto as an archetype. Pluto is urging us to drop the facade of false ego. Pluto, in one word, is about our ultimate personal truth. So we can have the reassurance that what dies under Pluto, it was no longer serving us, but it took the Plutonic experience for us to finally recognize that. So while I was sharing that it can be very destabilizing, because it is, but it's so supportive and important if we can accept, surrender,
allow, accept, embrace. Allow, accept, embrace.
Into the full moon. This is the maximum illumination after all of this growth and story development and experience of the first quarter. We've reached the culmination.
That's right.
At the full moon, there's sort of we're at the peak of the mountain of the lunar energy. It's a wonderful time to pause and bask in the moonlight. She rises right at sunset because she's opposite the sun. So as soon as the sun is setting, the moon is rising and will stay in the sky all night long. The full moon is sort of a culmination. We've arrived at the peak of whatever that experience may have gone in. Now, we're going to take a look at this chart more in depth for some more symbolism, but just as we go past the full moon, now she's decreasing in illumination. She's starting her journey home to a new cycle. So it's a time of release, letting go, tending the garden, taking agency to resolve what was created in the first half of the cycle, right? We're resolving what we've learned, how we can integrate it, what we can let go. We're gaining wisdom in the waning cycle.
Waning phase where I'm able to now integrate the wisdom into who I be. And it's not an overnight thing. It is a practice. It is a rhythmic, cyclical thing in which I'm going to always be able to revisit. So how does this apply to you? Where does this apply in your chart? Where did this fall in your chart? Again, please look at it through that lens and see where you are at in the story and where you can tell a more empowering one. And if you need help, let us know.
In this human design body graph chart of the full moon in Aquarius transit, the sun was in gate 7, line 4 in the G center. And opposite the sun, where we find the earth and its polarity, was in Aquarius in gate 13, line 4, conjunct the moon. The moon is always opposite the sun at the full moon. And so the moon was in gate 13, line 4. We also had Mercury in retrograde in the sign of Leo. Interestingly, Mercury turns direct the very next day. And I want to emphasize that because Mercury's been retrograde for several weeks. Mercury retrograde happens 3 or 4 times a year. It's always a helpful time to review, reflect, slow down. I love to ask myself, what is this delay offering me in a Mercury retrograde? But it's significant that Mercury is standing still at this full moon because the very next day he starts his forward movement So it brings a lot of possibility that Mercury was in retrograde station during this full moon, and Mercury was in gate 31, which is interesting because the sun and moon were in gate 31 at the new moon. So we're getting a very strong frequency of the channel of the alpha, a design of leadership for good or bad. Now, on the one hand, when we think about this transit from a collective perspective, we can think about it as being a lot of noise. Everybody thinks they're the alpha or talking like they're the alpha. There's a lot of it's all about me in that genre. But when we think about it personally and how it relates to our chart, whether or not we have those gates activated or that channel of the alpha, it is stimulating this feeling of what is my voice? How am I influential? How does my personal authority take in this frequency and relate to it and make a decision based on authority of how to express it or not? So none of this, it's always about personal authority for all of our decision making, but through a transit like this, we can know there's going to be deep plutonic impact from the cycle, as well as at the full moon, we're getting this sensation of the gate of the listener, this higher self role of interaction with others. And how can we be more empathetic, which is one of the great messages of this particular archetype of gate 13, is how can we listen fully, attentively, empathetically with open hearts?
Empathic means feeling with you. It doesn't mean feeling for you. And this gate of the listener is in line 4. The tagline is fatigue. And so for any empath, we understand that if we do not practice self-care, we continually feel with the other what the other feels without being able to metabolize it on our own. This is part of what the empath needs to learn to be able to put the boundaries in place to then hear what it is for them to hear. And in the 4th line, this is after we have selfishly felt everybody's feelings because we thought that's what we must do, into now building a new foundation for security so that I can continue to hear, continue to be with, continue to allow empathy to exude from me when I have my own membranes and boundaries that keep me healthy. And so this opportunity for us to stay seeing what love sees, to keep our heart open in all of the ways that we want to keep our heart open, that we want to be empathic, but to understand that we are not here for everyone. And that when we follow our bodies into the places and spaces that are for us, that means that some people won't be with us. And that's okay. And so the places and spaces where we were tired, where we have not built foundations that protect and nurture ourselves, are going to be shown right now, are going to be very apparent, and are going to make us feel zapped of our vitality and self.
And as you're sharing all that, it's making me think about some other layers here that we can tie into these beautiful words you're using. A couple of things that bring emphasis to that 4th line you were speaking to, which is that the sun, earth, and moon were all 4th line. In a harmonic frequency, we also had Mars in gate 46, line 4, as well as the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that's been taking place. I've been talking about this a lot in my transit reports. They haven't made their perfection conjunction yet. They will in February next year, but they're traveling retrograde very close together within minutes of a degree in gate 25, line 4. And if we take that and keep that in our minds and look at the astrological wheel, wow. Now there's a lot of information there. We're going to try to simplify it and distill it, but we can see Saturn and Neptune over here at 1 degrees of Aries are now directly opposite due to Mars movement into Libra at 1 degree. So we have a Mars opposite Saturn, Neptune, gate 46, gate 25.
The ability to be more disciplined in the way we embody the truth of who we are at our core, which is love. The ability to feel love as ourselves in our body, and the discipline and pure mystical hopefulness to make it happen.
Yeah, I think so. That Saturn-Neptune conjunction in gate 25 is one of I've been calling it the fulcrum of the larger pattern we're going through right now. Saturn, the planet of discipline and hard knocks, ultimate wisdom through challenge and fortitude. in the gate of innocence, that we can build structures to maintain presence and innocence. Conjunct Neptune, the planet of illusion, delusion, imagination, creativity. Neptune always brings a dissolving, a decreasing of boundaries. They're two incredibly different frequencies in this gate 25.
And this innocence that you speak of, innocence is allowing the natural movement of energy through your body to do what it does. That's innocence, to not think anything of it, just to allow the energy to move through our bodies. And so the offering of discipline and creative mysticism, anything is possible and we can do it. And so then Mars in 46 is, let's stay in the body, the power, the gumption to stay embodied while innocently being ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Another word I would add to that 25 you so beautifully shared would be a life without preconditions.
That's right.
This is innocence. And we know how we all build up expectations, desire, goals. Nothing wrong with intentions, but we often set rigid expectations. If this happens, then I will feel better or be happy. So with the work going on by Saturn and Neptune in 25, there's an opportunity to learn a new way. And I loved what you were saying about Mars, that energy in gate 46, the gate of, it's called determination of the higher self. It's very associated with the solar plexus due to the circuitry that it's in. And it's about presence. And so, as you said, there's this energy of Mars giving us the physical power to be present regardless of the circumstances. Importantly, to find integrity within. It's not about a fake face. It's about true emotions with presence.
It's about the body. So I know that we were talking about the moon and the moon in 13 and the moon in listening and hearing and being tired. But I want to remind you that everywhere you're tired is pointing you to where your energy lives. And that is where this Mars Saturn dance can help us move through the portal of our own resistance.
Beautiful. And if we add another layer to point out these amazing aspects in this particular chart, but we have Pluto here in retrograde at 2 degrees Aquarius. And again, this is this minor trine from the outer planet that we've been talking about in transit reports. Pluto is trine to Uranus and Gemini in gate 20, which is very significant. And both Pluto and Uranus are sextile to that Saturn Neptune. So we have this triangle here, and we can see that they're pointing, those three configurations are pointing at that Mars. So Mars is at the apex of this blue triangle. It's also in astrology called a kite.
Right.
But it's indicating through the trines and sextiles, there's great opportunity for flow, for communication. Think of a flowing river. There's a movement here that is without restriction. But at the crux of that is the opposition. In the middle of that triangle and sextiles, we have the opposition of that Mars-Saturn-Neptune that we were talking about.
Right.
And so I think what we can again say is that it has that death rebirth aspect because of Pluto. That's this idea of letting something go that's no longer serving us is going to be very supportive. We can say that Uranus, the planet of innovation, of technology, of shock and advancement, is in gate 20. So finding our unique voice.
Letting it come out. You know, this in Uranus, it just makes me think that it's not about you using your mind to go find it. It's about letting it come out, even when it scares you, even when it's something completely different than what you thought it might. Even, you know, just allowing the innocence, 25, allowing the innocence to inform the truth of who you are now. 20 is the gate of the expression of me now. So it's a beautiful, I think, companionship, a little party going on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Again, just from a casual observation of how many red lines versus how many blue lines, it's very dynamic. And of course, we can see at every full moon, we have the opposition between the sun and moon. And another interesting minor aspect, we might say from an astrological perspective, but I always love to take a look at Chiron here in retrograde and Aries. He's forming this, I don't know what color you would call that, with magenta, okay? It's called a septile in astrology. And the one word keynote for a septile is mystical. It
Yes.
has this idea that in that conversation between Chiron and Mars, there's something that may just come through. It's almost like a message in a bottle. But Chiron currently is in gate 3, the body graph. It's in the channel of mutation. Now, this will become even more important, I would say, in the near future, which we'll be talking about, because Pluto in retrograde is about to move into gate 60 for the last time. So we're going to have Chiron and Pluto in the channel of mutation. And again, Chiron's already there, but it's indicating that this idea of healing, the hero's journey, learning, Chiron is wisdom. It is through experience we can heal ourselves. And being in the channel of mutation in a septile to this Mars in gate 46, I think when we're in our flow following authority, there's going to be cues, synchronistic things that just happen, little winks from the universe, we call them, that we're like, okay, I'm on track.
And what I can't help but see here, I like to take the big picture and Mars and the evolution of all of our little boys inside. The patriarchy that is so lopsided right now represents to me Mars and the opportunities that we have to evolve our inner little boys, our inner ways that we fight to get what we want. We make ourselves more important than we actually are. We forget that we are part of this ecosystem. And I think that what I'm seeing here is with the Mars, Saturn, Neptune, Chiron play there and that septile that's there, it's allowing Mars this portal of initiation into his own growth. It is time for that mutation to come and take hold in all of our inner masculines and how they're represented in the world more innocently, more in the way of provide, protect, hold space, be initiatory, and the energy, all of our inner masculines, rather than hoard and war. And because it's in the outer planets, it's just such a beautiful opportunity for all of us to remember that it takes all of us to hold the idea that something new is possible in order for something new to be possible. And so when we tell stories this way, we are hoping to tell what could be possible so that maybe you could hold the truth of that for you too. And enough of us doing that collapses the wave function of that as our truth. So remember that there is an opportunity here for your inner masculine to grow, to find his own innocence, to know that he doesn't have to defend himself and he belongs here and is valuable too.
Yes. And in the midst of that, with that moon in gate 13, to listen with a new open-hearted, to dissolve the tension with the other through the self-love. And I want to mention also, as we near the end of this, that with that Mercury turning forward, Mercury will be traveling through what we call its shadow area. When Mercury goes forward tomorrow, it's going to be retracing that terrain from 4 degrees Leo to 15 degrees Leo for the 3rd time. And so these next couple of weeks here can be a really supportive time to find the clues, right? If there's a lot of questions right now, the Mercury retrograde slows our capacity to intellectually understand what's happening. We may get some resolution to that. I think as we go into the beginning of the waning phase, that there's an opportunity through reflection and inner contemplation to find new discoveries with the Mercury forward.
And to tell new stories. Remember that it exists in your mind and that's powerful, but it's more powerful when it exists outside your mind, when you speak it or write it or create it in some kind of way. So remember that might be helpful for you in the season of Leo, of Lion, of 56, 31, 33, these broke gates, 20 in Uranus. Just let something come that is more true, even if it scares you. And know that the powers that be, the cosmos, are moving through this exact same process. And so you are supported. You have the tides with you now.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like the cosmos is asking more than ever for authenticity.
Yeah.
And I believe it is we move forward into this strange new world. The currency of the future is your authenticity.
That is right. Beautiful. So we will end on that.
Okay.
Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Happy full moon.